One of the best resources to learn about business and entrepreneurship are podcasts. Because the last thing you want to do if you're interested in business is trying to figure out everything on your own, especially with such a vast sea of knowledge already being available to you. But that's also part of the problem, right? There's such a vast amount of information available, so how do you know which podcasts are worth listening to? Well, that's exactly what I'm here to tell you. I have personally listened to dozens of different business podcasts over the last couple of years, and I figured out which ones are the absolute most useful ones, so I can save you some time and give you my top 5. The very first one being Acquired. Acquired is a podcast run by two guys called Ben and David who go deep into the history of certain businesses. And when I say deep, I mean really deep. They routinely do episodes that are longer than 3 hours on just one company. Those deep dives are usually on some of the largest enterprises in the world. So the Amazons, the Nvidias, the Visas, you name it. So obviously on those kind of enterprises, there's a ton of information publicly available, and you need to very experienced business people to pick out the information that is actually interesting and relevant for the listener. Ben and David just happen to be the kind of people who have a perfect background to do just that. Both of them have worked in venture capital for years, they have entrepreneurship experience as well as technical backgrounds. So when it comes to unraveling these huge tech enterprises, their go-to-market strategy, their product diversification, etc., those two guys are the ones who are able to walk you through it step by step. On top of that, they recently had a couple of high-level interviews, including Daniel Ek and Mark Zuckerberg. So if you are interested in a business podcast that looks at trillion-dollar companies and can explain in detail how they went from a tiny startup to a scale-up to eventually becoming the global enterprise they are today, then Acquired is just right for you. But we have 4 more business podcasts to cover, each of them unique in their approach to business and to the kind of learning that they want to share with the listener. The next one on our list being My First Million. I really enjoy this podcast also because it's very different from Acquired. Let me tell you what I mean. So at My First Million, the two hosts, Sam and Sean, actually talk about potential ideas to make money. They brainstorm and discuss ideas with one another, but also have guests on regularly that share their way to success. And usually, although very successful, those are less known people having founded less known companies. So what I really like about that is, first of all, it's much more relatable to a person like myself. I know I'm probably not gonna be the next Mark Zuckerberg or Jeff Bezos. I'm not gonna found another trillion-dollar company, but I can see myself starting $1 million company. So hearing from people who have done just that and who share their approach is immensely beneficial to myself. Secondly, what is cool about My First Million is that they often have guests on who have made money in, let's say, unconventional ways. For example, I recently listened to an episode where they talked to a guy who built a $20 million business sending out a newsletter. He's sending out a newsletter about farming, of all things. And he makes $20 million a year through the subscription to that newsletter. Now, I don't know anything about farming, but I can say with almost certainty that there's not another person in the world who has such a successful business doing exactly what that guy does. And that in and of itself makes it interesting to listen to, because it also forces you to think a little bit outside of the box when you're trying to come up with potential business ideas. So if you are in the very early stages of thinking about potentially starting your own business, then this is the perfect place to start. The guests that they have on are extremely diverse, from completely unknown to known worldwide like Mr. Beast and Tim Ferriss. So there's a great balance and a little bit for everyone. The next podcast on our list is called In Good Company, and it is hosted by none other than Nicolai Tangen. If you are not familiar with Nicolai, he's the manager of the Norwegian Sovereign Wealth Fund, which is the largest sovereign wealth fund in the world, managing $1.4 trillion. Obviously, as someone who can move that much money around, he is extremely well connected in the business world, and he makes good use of that for this podcast. He has interviewed the CEOs of Nvidia, BlackRock, Hilton, Siemens, just to name a few. A few of those interviews might not go as much into depth and detail as some of the other podcasts that I'm recommending here, but I think that's also to be expected. If you are interviewing the CEO of a billion or even trillion-dollar company, they are so well trained in interviewing situations that they know how to get around a difficult question. So with that in mind, I think it's fantastic to get these high-profile people on a podcast where they have an hour and they potentially know Nicolai from earlier encounters, so they can open up a little bit more than they normally would when being interviewed by the traditional media. Now, will the majority of us ever become such a successful CEO? Probably not. But is it good to understand how they are thinking and how they are planning for the future, both for their own company and for the economy as a whole? Definitely. Because the decisions that those individuals are making have potentially the power to impact millions, if not billions of lives. Business podcast number 4 on our list is The Game with Alex Hormozi. Alex is potentially the biggest business influencer in the world right now. His content is all over social media and he has amassed a giant following, so it only makes sense that he also has a podcast. There he talks very candidly about experiences and lessons that he has learned from the businesses that he has founded and the money that he has made in the course of it. Obviously, this podcast is a little bit more focused on his personal view because most of the episodes is just him riffing on ideas that he has had. So make sure to take it with a grain of salt. But that being said, he is a very insightful human being and he's extremely eloquent when it comes to verbalizing the things that he has learned over the course of his lifetime. Personally, I also enjoy that he talks a lot about the mindset and the personal development that goes into running your own business and being successful at it. When listening to him, you understand that it's not just a numbers game. It's not just about the money. If anything, it's about doing the things that then have money as an end result. So much more than focusing on the external things, it's about focusing on the inner game, becoming the person that is eventually gonna be successful in what he does. And looking at Alex and what he has accomplished in the last couple of years, it is obvious that he knows what he's talking about. So make sure to check out The Game with Alex Hormozi. Last on our list, we have business podcast number 5 called How I Built This. How I Built This is probably the oldest podcast on this list. It's been around since 2016, but it continues to put out amazing content. Its goal is to regularly interview and analyze super successful entrepreneurs and understand how they were able to build the fantastic companies that they have built. The people that were covered by How I Built This include Richard Branson, the co-founder of Airbnb, the founder of WordPress, just to name a few. And in my personal view, it's one thing to interview super successful and efficient CEOs, but it's another thing to actually interview the founder of any given company. Those people have a creative vision. They know how they want to see the world change and they are not willing to dare try to do it themselves. Not to mention that those people that actually get covered on How I Built This are the 0.0001% of successful entrepreneurs out there. After all, 9 out of 10 businesses fail in the first 5 years, so to not only survive in your business but also manage to thrive is something that is truly extraordinary. I always gain a ton of insights whenever I listen to How I Built This, and on top of that I truly get inspired to go out and do something and try to change the world in small ways or big. So with that being said, I hope that this video also helped to inspire you a little bit to start a business if that's what you're interested in, or figure out where you want to go with your life in the business world. There's so many opportunities, there's so many things that you could be doing, and I think the 5 podcasts that I shared here on this list can be a great jumping off point to figure out where you want to go. Thanks for watching and talk to you next time.